Today I'm going to start work on the tree shear. I got a big piece of sheet steel right here. Over here I've got the sheet steel for the push box. This is generally going to be about how it's going to go together. These are going to be the sides, that's going to be the back. And I've got a bunch of different pieces of flat stock here that I've got cut. I think I've got a 5-inch piece there, a 4-inch piece there, a 2-inch piece there, and a couple more 2-inch pieces, all at different lengths. And that is all going to be for the push box. I've got some 1x1 square tubing here. This is 3/16 thick, some pretty beefy stuff. This is going to be for the side supports of the push box. So I'm trying to keep all this stuff together because that's going to be for that project. For this project here, I've got some round pipe. I've got some 3x3, some 2x2, some 1x2. I've got a piece of 1/4 inch by 4 piece of flat stock. This is hardened. This is going to be for the cutting edge of the blade. And I also got some more 1x1. This is 1/8 inch thick, and that's going to be for some of the supports for the setup. And then I got everything sitting on the backer to the tree shear. This is going to be getting cut 45.5 wide by 19, I believe. I got to retake my measurements and see. So I got to cut a nice slab off of this, and that's going to be for the skid steer plate that mounts behind it, and that's why I have this sitting on here. So pretty much when I cut this, it's going to look like it does just before this piece of 1x1 here. So this will be the back plate. This will be like the main frame coming off of it, and then this will be obviously the cutter. The hydraulic cylinder is going to come off of the left side, I believe, and I think I'm going to use some round tubing to mount in between the back plate and the main frame. This way I can rotate the cutter horizontal or vertically, depending on if I want to cut limbs off of trees or if I want to cut trees coming out of the ground. So I'm gonna get to work here. I'm gonna start taking my measurements and cut off this sheet steel, a piece for the backer for the skid steer plate. It's gonna be one of the longer cuts I've done with this plasma cutter on 110 volts. So hopefully it works out. Well, we got it cut. Gotta break it off real quick. That's gonna be our skid steer plate. Let me get this stuff cleaned up now, and then we're gonna move on to the next task. So now that it's cut to a height of 19 inches, now we need to cut the width. Now what I'm going to do is flip this around so I can get the slag knocked off to one side, and we can start welding on our brackets to connect to the skid steer coupler. This is 2 inches wide by 3/16 thick, so it's just under a 1/4 inch. Should be plenty strength. This is actually the same thickness that Kubota uses on their bucket for their skid steer mounts, so I think this will be plenty. I'm going to cut the mounts into 10-inch pieces, and we'll get them welded up to this. Once I get the mounts tacked into place, I will make some supports for the sides, and they will act as reinforcements for the mounts. Okay, so there's our 4 mounts. I'm gonna get them cleaned up on the grinder, and once we got them cleaned up, we'll start tacking them into place. All right, now that I got them cut, you can see I got one on each corner. So these are gonna go something like this here, so that the skid steer plate can get underneath it. And then these ones are gonna be going something like this here. And I'm gonna have them notched for the pin to fall through them to lock it in place. Lastly, I just want to do like a side support here on each side. So what I'm going to do is use the piece that I cut off of the side to make this the correct width. I'm going to cut this piece in half and use 1 strip for each side to put like this here. And then that way it'll give it some side support and a little bit more rigidity. So we got 3 1/4 here for a total width. So that's gonna be 1 5/8 inches, I believe. So I'll mark it there and we'll cut it right down the center. All right, there we go. We got our 2 side pieces. I'm gonna clean these up now and we can start getting everything tacked in place. All right guys, so I got the side pieces all cleaned up, the supports. They're all cleaned up. I also tapered them. I cut them at a 45-degree angle at the end here so that the top of the skid steer mount can fit like this over top. Now halfway through this, I ran out of wire, so I had to go pick up some more wire. And what came with this welder was .030 wire, which I usually don't use. I like .035, but since it came with the wire, I figured I'd use it up first. And you can clearly see a difference here between 030 and 035. So this is all done with 030, and I really didn't like the way it welded. It's a lot harder to keep the heat and to get good penetration with .030, I noticed. The weld seems to sit above the surface a lot more. And as I come over to here, this weld was done with .035. And you can see it's a much beefier weld. You can see it's lower. It's not as tall and as skinny. So I'm really happy switching back out to .035. This is what I use at work. And I really like this. Every time you see one of these black marks, this is where my tack welds were. And that's why you see those little gaps. But this side's done, so now I'm gonna go over there and work on the other side. But I got this side tacked into place, and then I welded this side fully. And now what I'm gonna do is stitch weld the inside. Okay, so now we got the side pieces all welded into place. Now we can put on the mounts where the skid steer plate is actually going to connect it to. Looks like it fits good. Just got to get the bottom mounts hooked up so that I can pin it. And that should be it. I left myself about an 1/8 inch on each side so that it's not super tight when I pull up to it. Yeah, it turned out good. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is mark where these pins are so that I can cut a notch in this plate before I tack it in place. So I'm gonna butt it up against our side support here. I'm gonna hold it about where I think it's gonna go, and I'm gonna mark the pin. Okay, well there it is, all welded up. I already test fitted it and it fits like a glove. These are the bottom mounts. Came out really nice. That plasma cutter does a nice job. Weld on the inside there. So yeah, now that that's done, I will flip it over and start building the cutter.